I've been getting a bunch of questions recently on the differences between the multi-year crediting strategies that you can find on index life policies. You can also find them on indexed annuities and your standard, way more typical annual point-to-point strategy. And so I thought I'd create a real quick video here just outlining the major difference between the multi-year strategy and the annual point-to-point. So just a few quick bullet points on the differences. Number one, if we're comparing, let's say, and I'll have an example for us, a 1-year lock-in versus a 3-year lock-in. What that means is in the 1 year, every single year, your index is going to post a return. Now that return could be zero, but it's going to give you a return for the year, and it's going to reset every single year. On the 3-year point-to-point or 5-year, 2-year, doesn't matter. It's going to reset every second, third, fourth, or fifth year, which means you're going to have to wait that many years until you get a return posted. And once that return gets posted, it then resets. So that's the first major difference. Pretty obvious, just length of time before you get a return. The second major difference is going to be all of your money is getting a return every single year in the annual point-to-point strategy, the 1-year index options. In the multi-year index options, you don't have all of your money in one bucket, especially if you're paying premiums into a life insurance policy, let's say. If you're paying a $50,000 premium every single year, well, year one, that $50,000 gets allocated to a 3-year bucket. In year two, you pay that second $50,000 premium, that does not get allocated to the same 3-year bucket. It starts a new 3-year bucket, so on and so forth. An indexed annuity would be different because you typically are funding those all at once. And so you very well may have all your money in a 5-year bucket that waits 5 years until all the money posts a return. But that's the major difference between life insurance and annuities. Are you paying premium or are you not? If you're paying premiums, typically you're not going to get a full credit on all your money every single year in a multi-year strategy. Now, this is where things can get complicated with multi-year index strategies because it may look like on paper, those strategies perform exceptionally well. And I've seen some of the marketing materials that show, 20 and 30 and 40% credits. And it shows that it seems like every single year. But what's important to know is if you're in a 5-year strategy and it shows a 50% return, that's 50% over the last 5 years, typically on only a portion of the account value. So it's not the whole account value and it's not 50% per year, it's 50% over the duration on a portion of the dollars. And I think this is where a lot of the questions I've been getting are stemming from. People are seeing those kind of ad inserts that show crazy returns. And yet when you compare that policy side by side with, an annual point-to-point strategy, it doesn't actually look like it's 4 or 5 times better. So what's going on there? Well, I created an Excel sheet. I'm going to share it with you here in a second. I'm not giving it out because it's not compliant, but it just shows you the difference between annual crediting and multi-year crediting. And here's the deal. The biggest difference between annual crediting and multi-year crediting is the compound interest, because you're not getting yearly compounded interest. You're getting compounded interest every 3 years maybe. And so that ends up being a significant difference over the lifetime of a policy. So let's look at what we're talking about here. So this is not a particular product, I should say. This is not a life product. This is not an annuity product. This is not a particular index. This is only comparing a 1-year versus a 3-year. We're going to assume the exact same rate of return, which isn't fair, but it doesn't matter because that's not the point that I'm proving. I just want you to see the difference in the compound interest. So again, this is not a particular product. It's not a particular index. We're using a 6.5% rate of return on the annual point-to-point basis. 6.5 times 3 is 19.5. So that's what we're comparing here. 6.5% every single year compounded versus 19.5% compounded every 3 years. No zeros, no fees. It's not a particular product. None of that matters. Just stick with me for a second. So in your annual compound interest, you pay a $50,000 premium. That's your beginning balance. You get a 6.5% rate of return. You earn $3,200 in interest. Your ending balance is $53,250. Pretty simple stuff. The next year you pay your $50,000 premium. It gets added to the return and the premium from the previous year. It all goes back into the index at 6.5%, 6,700. That process just continues to play out. And at the end of it, we're left with $2.8 million, 32 years down the road. Now, comparing that to our 3-year index is a lot different. So you'll see that I have a 3-year bucket A, I have a 3-year bucket B, and I have a 3-year bucket C. So every time you pay a premium, you pay that $50,000 premium, it goes into your bucket A. Do you get a return that year? No, because it's a 3-year bucket. You have to wait 3 years to get a return. So at the end of the year, how much is in your account balance? $50,000. Because there is no return. The next year, you pay another $50,000 premium. That does not go into premium bucket A. It goes into premium 3-year bucket B. So now 3-year bucket B has a $50,000 balance. Is there a return that year? No, because you need to wait 3 years. So the end of your year balance is $150,000. In the 3rd year, you post another $50,000 premium. You'll notice that our 3-year bucket A balance is purple. That means at the end of this contract year, it will post its return. $50,000 goes into our bucket C. We get a 19.5% rate of return on bucket A. That's $97.50. Our total account balance at the end of the year is $159,750. And so right out of the gate, you can see a huge difference between annual and 3-year compounding. We're at $159,750 versus $170,359. This is exactly what you would expect. This is not rocket science. Building the Excel sheet was more difficult than understanding that yearly compounding is better than 3-year compounding given the same rate of return. Very simple, very straightforward. You see that our bucket A gets the year 4 $50,000 premium gets deposited back into bucket A. So we just kind of recycle which bucket the $50,000 goes into, whichever one matured last. So the green is the bucket that gets the new premium, which is why the green stops after year 10, because there is no more premium going in. So our 109 is the same 109,750 for the next 3 years, and then it gets its return. Our 109 is the same 109 for 3 years, and then it gets its return. And since we're using a flat rate of return, and since we're using the same premium schedule, all these numbers are identical until we get to this last $50,000 payment, because bucket B and bucket C are one $50,000 payment short of bucket A. We'd have to do a 12-year fund in order for them to all be equal, but that's okay. We're doing a 10-year fund, not a huge deal. We go down 30 years, 32 years, and our 3-year crediting strategy has $2.4 million in it. Our 1-year strategy has $2.8 million in it. This is exactly what you would expect. We are only showing the difference of yearly compounding versus 3-year compounding. This doesn't have any application other than knowing that a 3-year bucket is going to need to outperform your annual bucket. That's the point of this whole spreadsheet. Your 3-year bucket is going to need to outperform your 1-year buckets because the 3-year bucket does not have annual compounding. It compounds every 3 years, which means you're missing out on compound interest every single year. You'd rather have 6.5 compounded annually than 19.5 compounded every 3 years. Very simple math. Okay. So the question becomes, we know that yearly compounding is better than every 3 years. So how much do I need to earn in the 3-year bucket to outpace the drawback of not compounding interest annually? And it's easy to do that because you just copy and paste the Excel formulas and you guess and check on the return. 22.05%, which turns out to be 7.35% per year. So if you can earn 7.35% per year in a 3-year bucket, resulting in 22.05, at the end of the 32 years, you have 2.877 versus your yearly 2.871. So really close there. So 7.35%. What that means is your 3-year bucket is going to need to outperform your annual point-to-point buckets by 13%. You're going to need to get a 13% delta on your crediting in order to outpace the loss of your yearly compounded interest. And that's why in those 3-year bucket strategies or the 5-year bucket strategies or even the 2-year strategies, you'll typically see richer benefits on the participation rates or maybe the caps because you're taking more risk. You're taking more risk by giving up your annual compounding. And so in order to win in those strategies, You need to outperform the same annual point-to-point rate, which is definitely doable. You're taking more risk, so you should expect what in return? You take more risk, you get what in return? Hopefully, more reward. Does that mean that a 3-year bucket is right for you? I have no idea. Because at the end of the day, what really matters is where is the money invested? I could tell you this much. If you were comparing a 1-year bucket to a 3-year bucket on an index that had a huge track record, let's just say the S&P, it would be very easy to determine which was the right strategy to choose because the S&P has a long history. You can look at the participation rates and the caps, and you can come up with the performance of those different index account options. So when choosing between a 1-year, 2-year, 3-year, 4-year, or 5-year strategy, the big things you need to know is, number one, not all your money is getting all of the credit every single year. Number two, you're losing that compounded annual interest in a multi-year strategy. Number three, you're going to have to outperform the annual point-to-point strategy in order to end up on equal footing. And to the tune of a 3-year strategy, you have to earn an extra 13%, not 10 plus 13 is 23, but 10 times 1.13. You have to earn an extra 13% on top of your annual point-to-point strategy in a 3-year bucket. Again, this assumes no fees, no cost of insurance. So is it a real 13%? Probably not. It's going to be different. But just looking at the pure math of the situation, you're going to have to outperform your annual point-to-point to the tune of an additional 13% on top of what you're earning in order to end up in about the same spot. So should you choose a 3-year strategy or a 1-year strategy? It's totally up to you. It depends on how much risk you want to take, and it depends on the underlying index that those 1-year or 3-year strategies are tracking. So hopefully this has been helpful. The goal is not to point you in one direction or another. The goal of this type of video is to show you how these things work so that you can make a good decision with your money. Hopefully it's been helpful. Until next time, take care.